So, good day, ladies and gentlemen. So I will see that I have screen here. Good day, ladies and gentlemen. It's an honor for me to welcome you to the second digital talk in the course of AGRITECHNICA Asia and HORTI Asia, jointly organized by DLG and WNU. Our topic today is post-harvest loss briefing, technology and management. My name is Klaus Edle of the DLG Competence Center of Agriculture. And well, I checked my calendar this morning and I realized that in the US, we have Thanksgiving Day today. It's a traditional day to celebrate successful harvest with family and friends. However, question mark, is it always to celebrate about? Also, our harvest might be successful. Up to 1/3 of the world's food is lost and wasted, which is a tremendous effect, which has tremendous effects. First of all, people of affected regions suffer hunger and malnutrition, and the production also use precious resources which are wasted as well. In the end, of course, with the loss of food and harvest, there's an economic effect as well. It's a responsibility of all stakeholders to minimize these losses, which is a reason for us to discuss about the perspectives, how to reduce the losses and keep the quality of our harvest. Therefore, we invited 4 speakers who are experts in different crops and subjects, but they are all experts in post-harvest management. But before I introduce the speakers to you, I will tell you that you really can, we are welcome to join the discussion with questions through the chat button on the bottom of your screen. All the questions will be read, and if we have not the time to answer all of them, they will be copied and stored and will be answered afterwards by our speakers and specialists. Now I want to introduce the speakers of today to you. And we will first of all have Martin Gummert. He is a senior scientist at the International Rice Research Institute at the Philippines. And we have also Rosa Waller. She's senior expert development officer at the FAO. She's today from Italy. And we have Arshad Ahmad Pal. He's scientist post-harvest specialist at the World Vegetable Center in India. And of course, I have my colleague here, Thomas König. He's expert at post-harvest management and advisor for development cooperation, here situated at the DLG. Before we go into the different talks, Thomas will have a short introduction, a short movie he prepared to cover the whole topic of post-harvest losses.
Harvest time is storage time. Farmers often put the harvest directly into their storage, expecting to get good and healthy food out of it after weeks or even months. But depending on crops and environmental conditions, losses after harvest can be very high, so families have less food to eat and to sell. Here are some examples how to reduce food losses. First of all, it is essential to look after harvested commodities and where to put them. Cleaning and sorting, it takes some time, yes, but it is worthwhile to do so. Bad parts must be put aside, while sorting, if you are in doubt, kick it out. Measuring moisture. Too high moisture is the reason for aflatoxin contamination. Cleaning and sanitizing the storage place. Rodents' pathway, for instance, should be removed before filling the store. What can be done with sorted out material? Some material, like broken corns, is excellent for feeding animals. Others can be processed and preserved, like sun-dried tomatoes. Some material is too bad for any consumption, but fermentation to generate cooking gas is an option. These are just a few examples. Actions and ideas are needed to reduce post-harvest losses.
Thank you, Thomas. This was a really good overview about the whole topic of today's talk. And to have a little structure in our talk, we divided the topic into two parts. So first one will be the technologies we are aware for the post-harvest management. So we will give an overview of good practices of technologies which are available or recently been developed, or which are actually needed in different parts of our harvests. So we will have a topic on rice, on vegetables, on fruits, and one example of a technology is the moisture meter. Our first speaker now will be Martin Gummet. He's the expert of the International Rice Research Institute at the Philippines. He works since more than 20 years on the topic on post-harvest in rice. And he will talk about the rice value chain upgrading for reducing post-harvest lossing. Martin, the stage is yours.
My video is blocked, sorry.
We will get it run.
Okay. I'm going to share my screen. So good morning, good day, good afternoon, everybody. As Klaus had said, I'm from the International Rice Research Institute. I'm in charge with all the activities there and post-harvest and mechanization. And yeah, I'm going to give a brief overview on rice. So can you see my presentation?
Yeah, everything fine.
Okay. So I give you an example from Myanmar. So this is a situation in Myanmar where they grow rice in rotationist pulses. And this is what farmers do. They manually harvest the crop, then they stack it in fields, and it takes 1 to 4 weeks until threshing. Then they do the sun drying, they do storage, and they market the rice in local markets. And the result is really high losses, very poor quality, and very low price. What we consider as best practice is basically mechanizing the different steps. The key is really reducing the time from manual harvesting to drying to less than 24 hours, and basically using machines to do that and equipment. So combine harvesters could be one possibility. Another one is manual harvesting and threshing. Then there are different types of dryers. There are different storage systems, and I will very briefly visit some of them. And so by using those, you can shorten the time between operations, you can safely store, and then you can market high quality rice for a good price. And we have done an assessment of the post-harvest losses, measured the losses in Myanmar. This slide shows you it's 4 seasons. And BP here is best practice always, and this is what farmers do. I just wanted to flag that up, that the losses are indeed extremely high. They can, depends a bit on the season, they can be up to 30%. And with best practice, you can really significantly reduce them. So sometimes people ask, okay, you mechanize operations, so you introduce fuel consumption and machines. So what about the environmental impact? But we've also shown, and that has been published in Nature Scientific Reports just last week, that by reducing the losses through mechanization, you actually increase the net profits from farmers from the loss reduction, but also the energy balances are similar. Why? You have machines that consume energy and so on, but you also need inputs and energy to produce the losses. So as a result, if you mechanize post-harvest, you have the same energy balance and you have similar greenhouse gas emissions. And the next slide. No, sorry, this is the last bit, so technology. I can talk a lot about technology, but there are really so many around. They're all available. They just need to be introduced, and it depends on scale, complexity, value chain integration. There are different drying systems for different scales. Hermetic storage is a new technology that fits in. Grain cooling for the commercial sector. So there are many technical options to reduce the losses. And my time is up, and I hand back to Klaus.
Thank you, Martin. This was just in time, perfectly. So we will have time later on to discuss and ask questions about your topics you highlighted here as well. So don't be afraid that we will not go into your topic again. Our next speaker with a short input will be Arshad. So Arshad Ahmad Pal is scientist of post-harvest specialists at the World Vegetable Center. And he's about post-harvest loss reduction in vegetable value chains, which is of course different to rice. So Arshad, stage is yours.
Thanks, Klaus. Thank you so much. So let me share my presentation. Okay, so a very good afternoon, good evening, and good morning to all of you from India. My name is Arshad Pal, as Klaus already introduced, and I'm working with World Vegetable Center as a post-harvest specialist. And it's my pleasure to speak about the reduction of post-harvest losses in vegetables. So before moving forward, I will just give you a brief introduction about my organization. World Vegetable Center was founded in 1971 and Asia Vegetable Research and Development Center, with the regional focus was on the Asia. And we are headquartered in Taiwan, and now we have been renamed as World Vegetable Center. So World Vegetable Center's research and development, it is not for profit, and our research outputs are global public goods. They are accessible to everyone. So World Vegetable Center has expanding global role with growing networks in the regional offices, and we have regional offices in different countries, say in Thailand, India, Tanzania, Mali, Benin, etc. So World Vegetable Center, we are working in both global as well as the traditional vegetables. And we are having the world's largest public collection of vegetable germplasm. Over 60,000 accessions originated from near about 154 countries. So as the topic is, so post-harvest losses are enormous. Of course, 1.3 billion tons of crops are being lost annually in the post-harvest stage alone. When it comes to the vegetables, we have done some of the studies in South Asia and Southeast Asia. We found that in case of vegetables, the losses even ranges from 40 to 50%. Obviously, we need to focus on how to reduce these losses because it is associated with all sorts of inputs. It's not only losing the food, but you imagine the amount of inputs are being used for producing this quality of food. So all those inputs are also lost, and ultimately profitability of the growers is reduced. As in the video Thomas already showed, also harvesting and field handling, it's an important unit of operation. The quality and condition of the produce during storage, market, and its subsequent selling prices are directly affected the care taken during the harvesting and field handling of perishables. Mostly we are talking about vegetables and fruits. Most of the post-harvest losses are due to the damage caused at the field handling. However, the damage is not visible at that time, but its effects can be seen further down the value chain. So there again, it is important is that we should do at least the basic harvesting and handling practices very well. Again, post-harvest temperature management is another most important step in obtaining the good quality and safe produce. So pre-cooling, it typically reduces near about 7 to 8 times temperature from the initial produce temperature. Again, another factor is sorting and grading. If it is done properly, we have done studies that we found that there is a 40 to 60% more value is added to the vegetables if sorted and graded properly. So there are different technologies available. This will require investments in handling, storage, distribution, and process practical cost-effective approaches, including use of plastic crates instead of using bags for handling, packing, and transport of vegetables to the market. And you can see in the slides, there are different technologies, say zero energy cool chambers, cold board storage, modified atmosphere packing, solar dryers, And other processing technologies are some of the technologies which are very much useful in reducing the post-harvest losses of perishables, particularly with the vegetables. And some other technologies are now coming. It is the markets of edible coating and fresh cut, etc. They are also showing the prominent results. So that's it, Carlos. Thanks.
Thank you, Arshad, for this overview. So it's a very tricky topic for vegetables in special, because it's a fresh fruit, so it has to be kept fresh and cooled. So similar to that, it's on fruits, and there we have Rosa Waller. She's next to be an expert on post-harvest. She's also team leader of food loss and waste. It's a food and nutrition division at the FAO. And Rose will tell us about, well, I have to wait a little bit until this thing, yeah, right. She will tell us about the importance of reducing food loss and waste, and of course, examples of the FAO. Therefore, she's sitting in Italy at the moment. And Rose, stage is yours. I don't know if your mic is open. Rosa, your mic is not open yet, or we don't hear you.
Unmute. Okay.
Now we hear you.
Okay. Apologies. Sorry about that.
No problem.
Okay. Good morning. It's a pleasure to be able to contribute this short presentation. I'm based at FAO headquarters in Rome, and where we are doing quite a bit of work to address the post-harvest issues. I was based also for 7 years in Bangkok, where we did quite a lot on, particularly in my area of work on fruits and vegetables. Now, what we do in terms of addressing the issues is to take a systemic approach where we actually work first to identify where critical loss points take place in the supply chain. The critical loss points are where you have the highest levels of losses. And then we work with our stakeholders to identify technologies of an appropriate level and scale so that we can actually manage quality, assure safety, and reduce losses. Now, I'll just give one example in the case of the mango supply chain we've done in quite a few countries. Now, in terms of technologies, you have some of the critical loss points that we have found at harvest, and that's due to, in the traditional chains, the lack of the use of harvesting equipment. So the trees are generally shaken, and then you have a lot of mechanical damage. Another issue, critical loss point, is it's in transportation, and that's largely due to the lack of proper packaging. And then in retail, we see a lot of issues with respect to disease and pest infestations. But that what we see in retail is a manifestation of a pre-harvest infestation. And so a lot of the times what we have to do is introduce improved technologies. For example, harvesting pole, we introduce a hot water treatment, which is what you see on the right-hand side, the different types of stackable crates that help to reduce the mechanical damage in the supply chain. Where we see possibilities for further improvements in technology would be improving in terms of the harvesting. The hand harvesters were to work the best because it's always better to handle fruits, very carefully. Potential exists, and this is also ongoing. A lot of work is also ongoing in terms of the development of filtration and disinfection systems that allow for water reuse. You can also go, if you go into a higher level of technology, which is sometimes demanded by certain export markets, need for vapor heat treatment. to preclude for phytosanitary reasons. That creates some of what we think are the best in terms of transportation. And of course, we have to look more in the context of circularity, in the context of the Sustainable Development Goals. And now, as the technologies improve, what we have seen is with the improvements so far that we've made, we already achieve a 72 to 80% loss in reduction in retail after 5 days. And as you can see here, you can see some of the evidence where you have some of the pest and disease infestations and the impacts of the hot water treatment. But what happens is the issue of being able to differentiate what has been heat treated, because the heat treated takes place within 24 hours of harvest, and there's a provenance issue. So going forward, we see opportunities, for example, for the use of emerging the digital technologies, such as, for example, the blockchain that would allow for end-to-end traceability to allow one to avoid any sort of quality and disputes in markets when the produce enters the markets. We also see already happening the use of codes, QR codes that allow for traceability, particularly when you're dealing with organic types of produce where the consumer or the buyer can actually scan those codes on the produce and see where it was produced and get more information as to the origins of that produce to validate the provenance of it. This concludes my presentation. I'll be happy to answer your questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Rosa. Perfect. That is as well as with vegetables, fruit is a very tricky thing when it comes to post-harvest losses with damages and so on. So Martin has it quite easy because rice in the end hopefully is dry, so easy, a little bit easier to storage, but there are, as well as all the other crops, there are challenges in rice as well. Finally, we will have Thomas König. He's the only guy who's sitting really next to me. All the others are remote, so to say. Thomas is advisor for development cooperation here at DLG, German Agricultural Society, and he will report a short introduction on post-harvest loss activities as business opportunities for agriculture stakeholders. Thomas, it's on you now.
Okay, hello everybody. I'm also trying to share my screen with you. Do you see anything?
Not yet.
Okay. Why not? So, do you see anything?
Yeah, works.
Okay, I have 2 slides as well. So hello everybody from my side. My name is Thomas König, as Klaus said. I'm sitting in Frankfurt, and I'm glad to be with you in this session. Maybe first of all, I will start with where I'm working. I am employed by GIZ. This is a German state-owned company which is working on behalf of the German Federal Ministry for Economic Cooperation and Development. In this program that GIZ is conducting, I am seconded to 100% to DLG, where I'm working. DLG at a glance is composed of 3 pillars. Trade fairs in the right corner at the top, like AGRITECHNICA Asia, HORTI, and all the other trade fairs around the world that DLG is organizing. The second pillar is testing. Food, agricultural inputs, equipment, any kind of tests are conducted by DLG. And the third pillar is knowledge work. like publications, expert talks that you are enjoying right now. I hope that you are enjoying. Collaboration between DLG employees and volunteers. And this is a major or a very important characteristic of DLG that has been established over the last 130 years. My job here at DLG is to give advice on development cooperation, which is really a cross-cutting issue about all three pillars. Okay, moisture meters. We have heard quite a bit about the relevance of moisture before storing. So I would not elaborate so much why it is important. I will just give you a few examples of equipment that has been used. If you have a look at the left-hand side, this is a rather fancy, costly equipment used by commercial farmers, can meter moisture, probably also raw protein to assess the quality of the harvest. But this is really with very accurate data. So, but this is very expensive. For smallholders in Asia, in Africa, this is probably not affordable. So if you have a look to the next picture, second from the left, this is a moisture meter developed in Kenya, which is very easy to handle. You fill it with beans, wheat, or any other crop, and then there is a battery-powered sensor on top, which indicates the moisture, and there is a explaining scale and list around the glass, which indicates very briefly how long you can store the product with a certain moisture content that has been displaced on top. Another also, and this has been developed and will be offered for less than 10 euros on the market, compared to the first one, which probably costs some 100 euros. The next moisture meter that you see on the right-hand side has been developed in Ghana, and this works differently. This is a measure sensor is put into a sack of material, and then the moisture content is being displaced on top. It's a different kind, but it works also pretty well. Designed for the African market, the further development that has been that will be done in a near future is to connect these data shown on the meter to mobile devices, for instance, which is useful, for instance, for service providers. If they have different meters in place in different places, he can collect all the data at home or in his office. So, summarizing that, I think there are options, technical options available, costly, non-costly. The major point is that farmers and other stakeholders along the value chains are aware that it is necessary to meter moisture, and if they are aware of that, then they can have a look at equipments which are available. Okay, this is it.
Thank you, Thomas. So now we had 4 speakers here, and we will switch back to our main topic of the first part. So it was all about technologies and the different respect of crops and how to do it. I see some questions in the chat, but not many. One is going for the second section, but one question from my side to Martin. Martin, you talked about that it's very important to have a very short time between harvesting and drying rice in the end, so there should not be more than 24 hours of processing. But after drying, which options of storing rice is available in the different countries, or at least for small-scale farmers? Can you give some examples on that?
Yeah. Thank you very much. So yeah, indeed. So rice is harvested at 22 to 24% moisture. It needs to be dried to 14% or less within 24 hours. So that's best practice. For storage, because we have in the tropics, often very humid conditions. the equilibrium moisture content is usually above the 14%, so the rice will reabsorb moisture. So you need to store it safely. And there are different methods to do that. It depends on the scale. So the hermetic storage systems that I showed, they are just plastic enclosures that hermetically seal the rice inside, so the moisture stays outside. You can use larger technologies like silos too in the commercial sector. You need to make sure that you manage your moisture content and keep the moisture out. You might have to aerate, you might have to aerate in certain time periods, or you can use grain cooling, for example. So there are different technologies available. For small scale farmers, I would say the hermetic storage systems are quite suitable.
Okay, thank you. Perfect. I'm not really familiar with processing of fruit and vegetables. So Arshad and Rosa, as working in my garden, maybe I also harvest fruits, and often you talked about physical damage on fruits and vegetable, but maybe I cannot see it already when I harvest. So the damage will really appear later on. So how should farmers really deal with that? Because of course I can sort it out as soon as I see it. So do I have to sort more often in really between very detailed time lapse or so? Or what is the practice in fruits or in vegetables? Maybe Rosa, if you have an idea on that first.
Okay, thank you very much for your question. And it depends on the type of, in the case of fruits, it depends on the type of fruit that you are dealing with. One of the reasons why I actually decided to look at the mango is precisely for that reason, because when the mangoes are harvested, they look perfectly fine. If they're properly transported in the right type of containers where you don't get any mechanical damage, that's also fine. But as soon as they start to ripen, a lot of the issues, and they begin, if they get damaged during transit, then they begin to ripen. It accelerates the rate at which they ripen. So they would only have a shelf life just around 5 days. Then as soon as they start to ripen, then you begin to see, it begins to manifest the latent infestations that have taken place pre-harvest begin to manifest. And that's one of the reasons why within 24 hours of harvest, the mangoes have to be hot water treated to arrest those problems. But a lot depends on the particular crop that you're dealing with, the plant, the fruit or vegetable in question.
Yeah, thank you. Maybe Arshad, what about vegetables? Is it similar to, for example, mango, Rosa said, or is it another idea about
Yes.
how the physical damage is dealt with?
Yeah, thanks, Klaus. Yeah, actually, as Rosa mentioned, although both fruits and vegetables are perishables, and vegetables are derived from different plant parts. Some are from roots, some are leaves, some are flowers. So accordingly, they need different kind of handling procedure at the field. So if this is from, suppose root is just taking an example of onion. So onion, we may actually, there is a little bit scope of if we will handle it roughly, but for just if we'll talk about cabbage or cauliflower or some leafy vegetable. So at the time of harvesting, we have to take care to properly harvest and put it, don't put it on the ground or just to take it to some shade, just put it in some plastic crates, take the shade, and pre-cooling, as I mentioned in my presentation. So pre-cooling is very much important, because in case of vegetables, the pre-cooling should be done as early as possible, because if we will not do the pre-cooling, there will be the field heat in the produce, and once we will store it or we will put in the package, so the respiration rates will increase, the temperature will increase, and that will deteriorate the product. So these type of things, I think we need to take care to take the produce soon after harvesting, to that, keep it shade, take it to the pack house, and just to cool it as soon as possible.
Thank you, perfect. And now we really have some questions from the audience in the chat function. And there's one question to Martin. Normally solar sun drying is not good for rice drying, but what can be best way to use solar power to dry rice in paddy?
Okay. Yeah, I usually refer to what people say solar drying under the sun as sun drying, just to not confuse solar dryers with sun drying. So sun drying is really bad for the quality. We don't want to do that. Losses are very high. To my knowledge, there's only one solar dryer that uses the sunlight for drying that is being to a small extent used in rice, and that's the so-called solar bubble dryer. Which is a long tunnel made out of plastic sheets with 2 blowers and a battery and a solar system blowing air through the tunnel. So that one can be used to use solar energy for rice drying, but it's still too expensive for small farmers. So, and I think we come in the next session on that you need to sort of have business models for use of machinery that farmers can access it, that they don't have to buy it themselves.
Okay, thank you. And one last question out of the chat, but be sure everybody who is putting questions into the chat, they will be stored and will be answered later on and dealt with, but we cannot answer all of them, of course. Also, we are really happy that you joined the discussion. And there's one question on the topic, I guess it's for Arshad, about lettuce. How much shelf life we can extend for lettuce through MAP packaging? If possible, please share specification of MAP material if you have any information.
Yeah, thanks, Klaus. Very nice question. So for leafy vegetables, there are different MAP. It depends on what kind of technology and what kind of method we are using. So for lettuce, we have done some experiments, and up to 1 week, we have extended the shelf life. And specification, I think I will reply this question or on the back end, and I don't have the correct information about the specifications. I think I will reply on them as well.
Perfect, thank you. So this question will be stored and answered later on. I guess we will do it via email or so. We will exchange the data. So for this first section, I will end now because I have to look on the time and everybody is busy, of course. So let's switch to the second part of this talk about management and funding. And there were already some questions on that topic. It's always a big question because anybody has to pay the new technology. So we are looking now for examples of upgrading the rice value chain, technical trainings, including online FAO community of practice on food loss and waste reduction, and business models, and of course funding. And always business is one big part how we can get innovations into the market and to farmers. So Martin, what about technical trainings or funding opportunities?
Okay, thank you very much. I share my screen again. There it is. Okay. The slides are a little bit complicated, but reducing post-harvest losses is not just bringing in a new technology. You really have to look at value chain upgrading. And there are different ways to do that. There's FAO basically defined these. There's process upgrading and new technology, product upgrading like better quality rice, functional upgrading like improving logistics, and channel upgrading, linking farmers to premium markets, for example. And I give you one example. I go back to Myanmar, to a project we had there. On the left bottom, you see the farmers. They produce low quality and rice and have very high losses. And we want to move them basically to add value and to produce high quality rice. And what we used is the Learning Alliance approach, where you basically interact with the different stakeholders and on sort of planning, acting, and capturing the learning, and then go back to planning. And I show you how that looked like in Myanmar. It's a little bit complicated, but we had all these Learning Alliance meetings here, moving along the trajectory, and it started with sort of doing an impact pathway analysis, creating awareness for post-harvest losses and quality, because often people are not aware of that. Then technology came in this case, a flatbed and hermetic storage, and then later management, new varieties that are more valued in the market, business models, and scaling out. And here on the top, the red ones are private sector players and other players, just demonstrate that you need to engage with many different actors along the value chain. And then also, for example, here that answers the question a little bit, look at support services too, for example, for financing. and provide access to that. So that's sort of the village level value chain upgrading. This is another one. So this is Vietnam, and it's very complicated. Again, we don't have to look at all the details, but it's basically the farmers. Then there's many different value chain actors in the traditional system with different types of mills. Some doing the husking, polishing, and at some point you get the consumers, either domestic or foreign. And you can just not produce good quality there. You also have tremendous losses in there. So one way to reduce the losses is then to basically what started is that exporters had rice mills and started having rice mills. And what is happening over the last maybe 10 years or so, what we call vertically integrated value chains, where you basically streamline the value chain, and the processors also engage with the farmers, for example, in contract farming, provide inputs and so on. And that way, you can significantly reduce the losses, provide benefits to farmers, and then also reduce the losses significantly. There are different programs that support that, and it's really sort of on the farm level, and it's sort of linking farmers with international standards. And this is the last bit. So basically, when we're looking at post-harvest loss reduction, we need to look at all that different aspects, including the financing. So we need customer-oriented approaches, village level, or the processors like in Vietnam. We have a shopping basket of technologies. They're already there. They just need to be employed. And then we need to facilitate somehow this dialogue, like in Myanmar, strengthening the support services, finance, and enabling access to that, and an enabling environment. So policy is important as well. And then we need funding, and I cannot say much about that because that's what we need. And basically we are always looking for that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Martin. It's all about money, of course. Although your slides, you said it, were quite complicated, but you tried to cover the whole value chain, of course. So it's a big one. So for the single individual person or part of the value chain, it will be easier to understand, of course, in the end. So thank you for that. Arshad, what about in vegetables, and funding and knowledge transfer? So
is it visible?
Yeah.
Okay, so here I have put a few examples of what I mentioned in the previous slide, that how these simple post-harvest handling interventions can reduce the post-harvest loss and add value. So best practices, as we all know, that technical recommendations that don't need experimental optimization, but to suit the locations. However, they are also needed the evidence-based. For example, we can say sorting and grading. So farmers do not usually sort and grade their produce for marketing. In this specific example on the top, we can see, so we have seen that the sorting and grading added about a value of 20 to 60% more value to the produce, in addition to reducing the losses as a result of discarding the diseased ones, damaged ones, and also the ripe ones, which are actually generating the ethylene and which are ripening the premature fruits. So here we can see in this image, what is the difference of post-harvest life of the sorted and unsorted. So this here you can imagine. And in another example at the bottom, we can see we have developed and optimized low-cost cooling options for various vegetables that can be easily used by smallholders as an alternative to expensive refrigeration and pre-cooling systems. You can see the technical and economic analysis of one of our evaporative cooling systems, for example, shown the weight loss was reduced, shelf life was increased by twofold, you can see, compared to the ambient one, and resulting in the high net returns to the farmers. So the best strategy actually to reduce the post-harvest would be actually to take a value chain approach. That first identify the problems and the opportunities through the value chain, and the findings will be used to orient the technology generation, promotion, and mainstream activities. Shortening the value chain, particularly with the perishables when we are talking, and establishing durable linkage between the producers and markets, cutting back the distance food travel will have a direct impact on the post-harvest losses. WorldVeg is introducing the low-cost pack houses in Bangladesh, Cambodia, and Nepal. We are involving smallholder farmers or groups or cooperatives, where farmer cooperatives, they aggregate, clean, sort, grade, and label their vegetables for the marketing in the nearby states. So this the pack house is actually, you can see in the here in the slide, it's an open area with roof. As you can see the example in this, with a small cold room powered by cool boat, evaporative cooler, and other washing and sorting uh, and grading facility. So this investment actually allows the harmonizing the demand and supply of the vegetables and cutting back the post-harvest losses. So these are very much effective we have found. Actually here a cool board I am mentioning, this is actually a device which is tricking the normal air conditioner to a temperature of 6 degrees centigrade. And another, the final is how we are actually taking these technologies to the farmers. So we are taking it through the different capacity building programs, strengthening their capacity through demonstrations, trainings, workshops, study missions. And in this slide, you can see we have developed different technology documents. So these are being distributed through online media, through different trainings, etc. And they are helping the farmers to actually cope up these low cost technologies and use them for reducing the forced harvest loss. So thanks, that's it.
Thank you, Arshad. That was a really good overview of a lot of actions your organization is doing. So Rosa, your organization is even bigger. So FAO is really a worldwide organization and is doing a lot on trainings and offering platforms for exchange. May you some insights into FAO organization on that?
Okay.
Don't stress.
Do you see my screen? Not yet.
No, we see you at the moment. Ah, it's working. Yeah, now we see your screen.
Okay. Okay, now I would like to share with you a little bit about the community of practice on food loss and waste. First of all, the community of practice is embedded in the technical platform on food loss and waste.
Rosa, may you go into presentation mode? It's not yet in presentation mode.
It's okay, sorry.
Yeah, perfect, thank you.
The community of practice is embedded in a technical platform on the measurement and reduction of food losses and waste. And this was officially, again, relaunched with a merger in July of 2020. Now, the technical platform is actually, it serves as a gateway to a lot of what happens in terms of the context of FAO's work on food loss and waste, but it also links to a number of different areas of work that FAO pursues in this area to address the issues from different dimensions, but also across different types of crops and commodities. And so on this first, for example, the introductory page, and if one is interested, you can see the link to the website at the bottom. You would actually be able to access further information, for example, about the statistical databases that were used in the development of the Global Food Loss Index, for example, but also to learn more about what we're talking about today, the issue of innovative technologies and approaches that are applied globally to reduce food loss and waste. Now, in particular about our discussions today, I could like to point you to the resources within the community of practice, because all of the information that we collect in terms of the activities that we do on the ground with countries is documented, first in terms of the good practice guidance that is provided, documented so that the stakeholders can use them as reference materials, but also in the context of fact sheets where we actually analyze some of the economic benefit, the opportunities then these fact sheets are very short, only 2 pages that give a generalized overview of the technologies, and then they do some economic analysis of the different interventions, the technologies introduced, and as well as cost benefit of adoption of these technologies by different stakeholders. In particular, we work with organized groups of smallholders rather than individuals. Now, going specifically into the community of practice, the community of practice was actually established with funding support from the Swiss Development Corporation, and in a framework of a project that was implemented by the Rome-based agencies, and it serves as the dynamic component of the technical platform. So it allows different individuals to register and to participate in online forums, but also it allows for the opportunity for further networking, because by joining the community of practice, you get access to different individuals that are working on different areas of linked to food loss and waste reduction. So these are some of the benefits that can be derived by becoming a member of the community of practice. And the forums and the different types of discussions can originate from our partners and members, but also sometimes the issues that FAO sees as being relevant and important, and we may also invite individuals to share their views and to give us ideas on what areas of work they would like to discuss and address. Now, in terms of technologies, there's one last thing that I wanted to highlight, because we are now working on developing an innovation platform on post-harvest loss, because through a lot of our projects, we wind up having to design and develop small items of equipment. So to a large extent, we now develop those in as 3D models that can be downloaded by countries and actually fabricated. And so the collection that we now have, we're actually now working to get those out and to have them online. So this concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Rosa. This is really impressive, because also DLG is working with such kind of fact sheets for, at least for farmers in our case. So this is one really good way to get knowledge to farmers in a very easy way. Thank you for that. So Thomas, now it's on you to tell us your ideas about management and funding.
Okay. Do you see
Presentation mode?
Do you see the presentation?
Yeah. Good. Yeah.
Is it okay?
Yeah.
And do you hear me?
No, we don't hear you. I hear you, but they don't hear you.
I have to unmute my mic. I see. Okay. You see. Okay, we have heard a lot of things are relying on money. So I would like to talk a bit on money, but not so much on behalf of DLG, because DLG is not a funding agency, but more on behalf of BMZ, the ministry that is funding my program. So the German government provides some funding schemes addressing private investors, the private sector, and NGOs. First of all, the private sector, of course, but also NGOs are included and can apply for fundings. In general, these fundings are differentiated between loans and grants. Loans means, okay, like a loan from the bank, and grants are not refundable. It's not refundable money. The general requirements, I mean, there are more than 80 funding schemes in place by BMZ, so there's definitely not the time to explain all of them or to Of course not, but there are some or three general requirements that I would like to highlight. Investments, when we are talking about investments, must be in line with the German development strategies. It is not only about expanding markets, but also like SDGs or maybe some more specific strategic issues laid down in the German policies have to be fulfilled to apply for fundings, either loans or grants. So this is very, very important. The second point is that a certain range of legal entity size has to be fulfilled. Normally, it is not dedicated to startups, but a certain number of employees must be employed by the company, certain range of revenues and years of experience. These is just to make sure that things might work well. Anybody's sure about that, but it is more likely that things are going well. And for this sizes, the German government provides different schemes targeting larger companies and smaller companies. The last important requirement is that usually an own contribution of the applicant is required and is obligatory. It ranges between 5 and 25% or 50%. That really depends on the scheme, but in general, an own contribution is obligatory. So that means it is a shared risk and a shared funding between the applicant or the investor and the governmental funding schemes. I would like to give you briefly an example of a very, very good idea how to generate the own contribution. There is this recycling center placed in Guinea by the company Sodia Plast. And this company is in cooperation with Guinea, which is a German-based NGO. And they have agreed on, okay, they will collect plastics, they will process the plastics, and in order to produce plastic bags, which can be used for hermetic bags. This is exactly what Martin talked about a minute ago. So this is a very nice combination, first of all, between recycling economy and post-harvest losses. And secondly, this is the point is how they can get the own contribution. They have received a public funding by the German government of 80% of the required investments sum, and 20% they have to get via own contribution, and they started a crowdfunding. And this was the idea of the NGO. They can collect the money they need via crowdfunding, and I heard it yesterday evening, they were successful in getting the money required, and so now they can start implementing this recycling center with improved machineries. So yeah, this is maybe hopefully gives a little bit insight of how it can work, but not to full extent, of course. Thank you.
Thank you, Thomas. Especially the last idea is really great to have a recycling issue going into post-harvest and producing new materials here. Thank you for that. And now the stage is open for questions again. And we had one question already a few minutes ago from Klaus Braunbeck, which goes to all of the speakers, I would say. He's talking about how do we get the new technologies and new ideas really to the farmer, and farmers are really often don't get a good funding from banks because it's small scale farmers and it's hard for them to get in reach to big organizations. Or would it be better to make such kind of, well, we call it also vertical integration, so the post-harvest sector, the traders should invest for the farmers' equipment to improve the quality of the product in the end. So is there any experience, or Arshad, you showed pictures of kind of you called it the pack houses. Is it financed by the farmers, or is it financed by the traders who really then sell the products in the end? Can you tell us this?
Thanks, Carl. It's a nice question. Actually, initially we have demonstrated it through one of our USAID projects. But in the other places, what we observed, actually the farmers are forming a kind of group. So they are in the farmer producer organization or etc. So they are using these, then they are just making some contribution and putting these technology, and they are using it as a kind of a custom hiring. So they are giving them to the other farmers and they are generating little bit revenue from that and keeping it running. So these kind of things we have found and quite successful at some places. Just they are making some of the technology, suppose just this pack house. So pack house will not be an individual farmer. So just a group of farmers, a farmer producer organization, they are putting it, and then other farmers are coming and they are charging it just a nominal charge for them to suppose for sorting, or they are supplying the crates, as I mentioned, the plastic, they are supplying the plastic crates to them. So they are charging that maybe a small half cent or 1 cent, like in the Indian condition, I am saying 1 rupee. So they are charging like that and keeping it running like that. So that's the kind of, but for the small technology, we can answer, but these bigger ones, I think that is the option, what I feel. But Rosa and Martin may add something more.
Yeah, up to you, Rosa. What is it about your experience from FAO side? You have a lot of statistics and a very good network to have an overview of how it works really in the different regions. What about the funding? Is it more focused on the farmers individually, or on corporations, or really on the stakeholders coming after the real crucial production?
Okay, thank you for your question. I just wanted to pick up a little bit on some of what Arshad mentioned, because in some cases, for example, and the larger types of projects,
So we lost connection to Rosa for the moment. Maybe Martin, you can jump in, and you showed us the whole value chain actually. So where would you say would be the best point to really get in with fundings, and how to ensure that the funding is really distributed to the right point in the whole value chain? We need your mic open.
Sorry. I think it depends a little bit. Countries are on different trajectories in terms of mechanization and post-harvest value chain upgrading. So it depends a little bit how you, basically what the needs are. So from our loss assessment in Myanmar, basically drying and storage were creating the highest losses. So I would basically see that as an entry point. But then Dr. Yen was commenting, and he said farmers will never should not store. And that's a trend that we see in many countries that get mechanized, that farmers don't store themselves anymore. They sell the crop to the traders or to the millers directly after harvest. So I cannot give a general suggestion there. I think what you really need to do is looking at what the needs are, what the trajectory looks like, and where will we be in 5 or 10 years and so on, and then make decisions based on that. For the funding for farmers, there are many different models, was already mentioned. So small farmers will not be able to invest in equipment, but it depends on the technology also. Combine harvester, standalone technology replaces one operation, contract services. So that's a typical model for that. So supporting contract service providers, it can be either private people who just operate combines, or it can be bigger farmers, or however that looks like. For a dryer, for example, it needs more integration into the value chain. And there you really need to have proper business models for the drying, where you can see you can actually recover the investment in the dryer, which will not be on the farm level, and so on. So I cannot give a general answer to that. I think it really depends on the situation in the countries and the trajectories.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. Rosa, are you back with us?
yes, yes. Somehow we just got disconnected. Sorry about
No
that.
problem.
Yeah. Okay. So basically, one of the things that we would tend to do, and that we have seen a very successful experience. We have had a successful experience is through the public-private partnerships. For example, under a large project, a packing house was constructed in Laos. Of course, we had a market based on market demand from Thailand. And over time, what happened is the private entity built on what was established, that infrastructure, by establishing a cold chain system. And that allowed for increased market opportunities, but also it allowed the producers, the small producers, to be able to supply what didn't go into that export market, that cross-border trade, allow them to also supply it into the local markets. So they diversified their market opportunities. The private entity was able, then eventually took over, developed a public-private partnership with the government of that region and continued to operate. So that's one model that I think where you have large-scale infrastructure, and that's at one level. And at another level, when we work with a lot of the small holders, we work actually with the groups, piloting with the on and hands-on. To a large extent, you find that the traders are the ones that see the benefit very quickly, and they will actually invest, and they probably have the capacity to invest. But what we see happening now also, for example, when one introduces the plastic crates, and the smallholders see the benefit of those technologies, what they tend to do is have the transporters are the ones who are now managing the crates in the plastic crates in the supply chain, and so they facilitate. So there's a small fee that is paid by the small holders to actually use those crates for the transportation of their produce, and in the end, everybody in that chain becomes a winner. To a large extent, because because of the better quality going into the markets, they can afford to pay that small additional cost to transport the produce. Because normally in the past, when they were using those big plastic bags, what was happening from our surveys was we found that they had to pay 30% additional to the cost of the produce because of the risk that 30% would be lost in transportation. So we're seeing different types of business models that are emerging, that are working in the interest of getting small organized groups of smallholders to be able to better to deliver better quality in markets, diversify their opportunities, and take up some of these improved practices. Thank you.
Thank you, Rosa. Perfect. Good to have you back, actually, after the short disruption. But we have one, I would say, a last question, but it's a really good one. We have a question about hydroponic markets. So hydroponics, I guess it's more focus on urban areas, not on the rural areas. And is there a difference, hydroponics in vegetable production, because hydroponics have very clean products in the end? Is it easier to manage it post-harvest, or is it more or less the same because handling and so on is also quite complicated? Maybe Arshad, do you have experience on that topic, or anybody? Arshad, maybe?
Yeah, so thanks, Klaus. Yeah, so hydroponics, actually we are talking, so this is normally actually it's not grown in the field, so we are saying, okay, the produce is hygienic compared to the, but when we talk about the investments, so this is huge. There's a lot of difference between the investments, what we are growing in normal fields or in low cost protected cultivations. Hydroponics has a huge investment in that, but although, yeah, because we are using the investment, the effect of disease, it is totally controlled, it will be less, so damage will be less, but the post-harvest process, I can say it is more or less same, because, but I think in that case, the person who is growing the hydroponics, he or she may respect more the vegetables than the farmer who is growing in the field, because the field, so that is actually, but overall the process is more or less same for the post-harvest handling.
Thank you. So it's yeah, you said it. Oh, it's a lot of investment, a surplus investment. So it's not for the smallholder farmer, but maybe for a very urban style farming, because the market is very close, so you can invest a bit more. So with a look on my watch, we have to somehow get finished. But nevertheless, all the questions arise in the chat function and Q&A function. We will collect and address it to our speakers, and they will answer, of course. And yeah, finally, I have to say, post-harvest is a big topic, and now we spent 1 hour, and it's really too less to have all the aspects highlighted we want to have. We learned out of that hour that there are a lot of technologies rising up, and they also have all very specific points of action. We have to reduce the time between different processing aspects, and also extending shelf life with less physical damage. And of course, a big question is always, yeah, I have to invest in technology and also in maybe in labor and knowledge, and where is the money coming from? But we learned there are some programs, or a lot of programs, but like Martin said, it's very individual. We have to really look into the region, into the structures in the regions, and how the people are working together to really put the funding on the right place, find the right program, and then apply for the program, of course, having a business plan. And this a small farmer cannot do on his own, so there must be support, and all your organizations really support those guys in find funding for specific technology. So I have to say thank you, first of all, to all you speakers, to Rosa in Italy. Thank you for joining from FAO side. And I'm really, really proud of having you this morning here. And with your, I will have a look into your fact sheets on the different crops and economic displays as well. So thank you to Italy, especially. And also to our,
yeah, thank you.
Perfect, thank you, Rosa. And to Arshad, thank you for joining us from India. It was perfect to have you here, especially on the look on vegetable production and fruit production. It was really interesting on that because I'm not the fruit and vegetable guy. So really perfect to have you in the round. Thank you for that. To India.
Pleasure, my pleasure, of course. Thanks.
And Martin, we know each other already a few years, and rice is something I can do with a combine harvester. That's my toy, so to say. I see more often. Thank you for that, and goodbye to the Philippines. Thank you for joining.
Thank you very much for having me. Thanks.
Yeah. And Thomas, you sit next to me in the room. We will have a cup of tea later on together and talk about it. So we have a lot of input, and I guess we will make out of something out of that. And we are looking forward to come together to the AGRITECHNICA Asia in May. Thank you for that, Thomas. And
yeah, thank you very much, and thanks for moderating this session so brilliantly, and thanks to VNU, to Thailand, for organizing that. Thank you.
And that's a point I have also to thank all the audience, the listeners, and also all the ones who joined in the chat. And of course, this is not the last digital talk we have for the AGRITECHNICA Asia and HORTI Asia. In a few weeks, on the 16th of December, we will have another one, same time, same place, about integrated solutions for precision farming, hosted by the UK's Department of International Trade. So we will jump to the UK, but looking at to Southeast Asia for precision farming. And finally, I also want to highlight the AGRITECHNICA Asia and HORTI Asia digital platform. You already know it, all of you, because you joined this talk via this platform. You can use the platform to have a look in new technologies, to get in connection with our speakers and also with providers of new technology and also other organizations. So use the platform, but I would prefer to meet all of you in person in May, 27th to 29th May, next year in Bangkok, to the AGRITECHNICA Asia, HORTI Asia Trade Fair in Bangkok, and really shaking hands and not only waving to the camera on our screen. Thank you for joining. Have a good time, and see you next time on 16th December on the digital talk. Thank you and goodbye.